Hi, and welcome to this video on 5 super tips that you can use to develop an assertive image. We can think of assertiveness as confidence translated into action. Now, we're not talking about browbeating and bullying. We're not talking about being aggressive. We're talking about being assertive. And assertive falls somewhere on the spectrum between passive, which is not good, and aggressive, which is also not good. But we want to find a balance, a happy medium right in the middle about being assertive and translating our confidence into action. Now, if we can do this, our employees will resonate with that. They'll see us as being more confident in our roles as managers, and we'll be able to develop that healthy respect that comes from being assertive in being able to get our positions and our points across and motivating our teams to actions and activities that drive results. Now, when you're developing assertiveness, it's really important to note that constant practice, constant diligence and vigilance is important. You want to make sure that you're conscious, you're mindful of what you're doing and how you're developing your assertiveness. Those who are assertive, especially in the workplace, they come across as having a healthy self-respect. Not arrogant, but that confidence, that healthy self-respect. And that is projected to a team. So as a manager, that's an important thing because a team is more likely to follow you as a leader if they can see that confidence projected through your assertiveness. Now, here are our 5 super tips for developing an assertive image. Now, tip number 1 is to assess your own behavior. Be aware of what you're doing. What goes on with you in terms of your nonverbal communication, your body language? How are you coming across? Are there times when you're acting very passive when you should be more assertive? Or are you being a bully or being aggressive when you should back off a little bit? So again, tip number 1, be aware of your own behavior. Super tip number 2 is to keep track of your interactions. Now, this might seem like a discipline that can be hard to get started, but think about keeping a journal, keeping track maybe at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, just to jot down things that have happened over the previous 12 or 24 hours. This is a great way for you to analyze what's going on in your work life and your personal life. The giant of philosophy and psychology from the early 20th century, John Dewey, said, "We don't really learn from experience, we learn by reflecting on our experience." So keeping a journal and reflecting on our day-to-day experiences, especially as it relates to being assertive, is a great way to learn. We can analyze our own behavior and build on that and learn from that. So keep track of your interactions. Tip number 3 is to reflect on those passive or aggressive interactions that you had in the previous day or the last couple of days. So this really builds on tip number 2 of keeping track of your interactions. Tip number 3 is actually take the time to reflect on those interactions. Where were you too passive? Where were you too aggressive? What were the circumstances going on? Why did you fall into that bad behavior of extreme passivity or extreme aggressiveness? You might even want to take the time to get some coaching or some feedback on how you did in that previous period or in that situation. Maybe take the time to role play a better response to a situation. So think it through, play it back in your mind, play back a better response, and then if you need to, take it to the next level and role play that with a close colleague or a coach or a mentor. So really reflect on what happened. Tip number 4 is a very practical approach. It's about expressing our feelings or our needs very clearly. So this is all about communication. So once we're engaging, once we're in the moment with our team or our colleagues, we need to be very clear in our communication about what we expect and what we want. So often, a problem of not being perceived as assertive comes down to not communicating clearly or communicating in the wrong way. So we need to think about approaches to communication that help us to give clear feedback, to give clear praise, to give clear direction. So a couple of things that you can do here is really think about the receiver of the message, the other end, the person on the other end of the message who's getting your direction or your feedback. They need very clear, concise information. The more clarity you can give in your communication, the more assertive you'll be perceived as being. If you fall into the trap of blaming and always blaming someone else for problems or difficulties that you're having, saying you all the time. Think about taking some ownership in the situation. Now, use the word I. If someone's always late, you might say, you're always late. But be assertive, turn that around and say, here's what I need from you. I need you to be here on time because we have this dedicated time on our calendar. It's sacred, whatever that might be. But be assertive, be clear about what you expect. This is a way that you can change perceptions through this subtle art of communication. And finally, tip number 5, which just might be the most difficult one, is about learning to say no. Now, most of us from a very young age, we're programmed to say yes. So when we're dealing with authority figures, it might be teachers and parents at a young age, but now in work, managers or executives, we're programmed to automatically say yes. And we're told that, or at least it's implied, that saying no is a bad thing. But saying no is just a way of setting healthy limits. And saying no in the right circumstances can help you to be perceived as assertive. And that's a great way for you to craft this type of image. Now, here are 3 practical ways that you can implement this art of saying no. Don't feel like you have to respond immediately. If you feel the pressure to say yes immediately, maybe take a step back, ask for some time. Tell the other person, hey, I need to check my schedule or my calendar on that, or I need to check to make sure that I can actually accommodate what you're asking for. Give yourself some space to come back with a proper yes or no. Practice saying no in safe situations. So maybe if your colleagues say, hey, let's go out for a drink on a Wednesday night, maybe that's a safe situation where you can say, no, tonight I need to be home. So practice that motion of saying no so that when you get into a tough situation and you feel pressured to say yes, you're already comfortable with the fact that it's okay to say no sometimes. And finally, when you're saying no, be firm but polite. You might feel this internal pressure like I'm being rude or I'm being a jerk. No, you're just coming off as being assertive. You're telling someone this is the way I feel or this is what I want. So be firm, stick with your decision of, in this case, saying no, but be polite. And people will respect you for it, and they will see you as being more assertive. Thanks for joining us for today's video. If you like this video, be sure to like it and maybe even share it. And be sure to subscribe to Noodle Factory at noodlefactory.com.sg.